And there's some other things that we may get into today, but those are some of the typical preferences that would go into an equity deal. The other thing that everybody wants to probably talk about is, you know, the valuation of the company, right? So if you're raising $250,000 as an investor, if I put that in, how much of your company does that get me, right? So the only way to know that today would be to put some sort of value on your company. So if your value is $750,000 and I put $250,000 into your company, how much of it do I own? Third. You'd think a third, but if I put $250 into your $750, then how much do I own? 25%. Then I own a quarter, right? Because it's now worth $1 million with my $250, right? So post-money valuation divided by the money I put in becomes my ownership share, right? So if I put in $1 million and you've got $3 million in it as your pre-money, I own 25% of the $4 million now that the company's value is. So that's how pre-money, post-money valuation. Now, how do you set pre-money valuation? That's a whole other discussion, which we probably won't get to too much today. But without knowing that, there are some other ways around that, but most investors like to kind of establish a value along with the owners of the company. So
is that generally equated to revenues?
At early stages, not.
Most of them don't have revenue.
It's generally
well, we're like 11 years old, so if we were to look at something like that.
If you were to be a little bit more opportunity to set up a valuation based on some discounted cash flow going forward and so forth, because you have a record.
Yeah.
But you would still have projections going forwards for, say, the next 5 years.
Exactly.
And it would probably be some combination of your track record as well as the projected growth of the company, and then try to figure out what number makes sense to the owners as well as to the investors.
But Joel, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not really a science per se, right? It's not education, it's more of an art.
It's really an art.
Yeah.
And a negotiation.
Yeah, pretty much.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the types of companies that may be candidates for, you know, equity? Because not everybody, you know, if you look at what I've seen in the past is if, you know, you're more on the services side, chances that you're, you know, getting equity investments are a lot less than if you were like a technology solution that may have a bigger return, etc. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Generally, you want to, as an investor, you're looking for companies that can have some scale opportunity where there's going to be real multiples of current revenue going forward. Think of a portfolio of investments that a person who has a lot of wealth could put their money into. So they could put it into cash today, which is about zero, right? They could put it into, they're going to lose it.
Yeah,
right?
that's a great idea.
They could put it into real estate, which depending on where they put it, they might get a real good deal today. They might, you know, depending on how well they do. They could put it into public equities, right? So they can play the stock market, put it into bonds. They could put it into art or commodities of some kind, right? And so there's always risk associated with every investment. But any of those that I just mentioned there, if you were able to get 20% on your investment in an annualized fashion, you would feel like you were doing really well. Okay? In these kind of equities, because they're very risky, you're putting your money into companies that typically may not have any revenue at this point, and you're really betting on the future, you're betting on the team. You're not looking for a 10 to 20% return. You're looking for something maybe 50% annualized, because some of these companies are going to go down in flames. Some of them are going to take a much longer time to mature before you get any exit. And so you're looking for everything that can kind of jump that hurdle of 50% a year. So those kind of companies are really, really hard to find. Okay, so they're typically in integration. I mean, Toby will talk a little bit about that. Technology, where you have some improvement that's taking place over what's currently existing in the market. Life sciences is an area where it certainly is a high equity play. Maybe some forms of energy, real innovations in energy. But anything that's going to grow at 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 or even 30% a year, it's tough to figure out how you're going to be able to return a multiple at 50% a year for 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 years to your investors. So I think you're right. It's all about what kind of company this here, typically product-based companies more than service-based. I'm sorry, John, you
No,
know?
I was just saying I was one of those companies, so.
And then, the other big
Yes,
piece
yeah, you
that
are.
we see a lot of is companies come forward and they have no exit strategy. I mean, they don't really want to exit. They want to create a lifestyle business for them to pass down to their children or whatever, which is great, but there's no exit opportunity for the investor to get out and have a return. So it has to be a business that's going to grow exponentially, as Joel said, but also has an opportunity where there's a buyer at the end of a 5-year window. I mean, it's looking more like a
That
10-year
maybe gets
window.
over to some of the things you were gonna talk about.
Right.